What's going on, guys? RagingRaptor here, and I welcome you to a new video, because today we are going to have a look at 3 damage models which are currently on the 1.6 test server. As you might know, Tanks.gg still has a little bit of wonky stuff going on, so I decided to give you a heads up of Games Models 3D, where from experience so far, the damage models are pretty darn accurate. And we are going to have a look at the upcoming Tier 9 Frontline reward tank, at the M48 Raumpanzer, which is, in my personal opinion, just a German Super Pershing. And lastly, we are going to have a look at the E75 TS, which is most likely going to be, or could be, a Tiger II replacement for the rebalancing of the E100 Tech Tree. But again, if you want to see the stats for those tanks, I have videos linked to them already but keep in mind, as far as I know, the M48 Raumpanzer got a little bit changed and got made better. But now let's have a look at the armor model of the AE Phase 1, this behemoth, the tank you can all get as the first Tier 9 reward tank in World of Tanks history, which you can get through just purely grinding Frontline. So this tank is obviously an American heavy tank, and this is definitely, you can see that in its armor profile. The important, or the very interesting part, is its upper front plate, which is 120mm thick at a 66mm slope, giving it usually an effective armor of around 206. Like, it really depends. If you're standing above him, obviously the armor loses all its fashion and all its magic, because then it goes down to all the way to 210mm. But if you're below him, or on level maybe with him, it's around 280 to 300mm to even auto bounce angles of armor. So the upper front plate is definitely nothing to cough at, which I usually tend to do quite often. The lower plate is also rather thick. There we go, again coughing. The lower plate is also rather thick, with 171mm of armor, and at the angled downwards, which, well, it reminds me a little bit of the Badger lower plate. It looks like a weak spot, but for lower tiered opponents, this is definitely not a weak spot. Please don't forget, this is a Tier 9 vehicle, meaning it can see Tier 7 tanks, something like the Leo, which has 155mm of penetration on its standard rounds, or an IS, which has 175mm of penetration on its standard rounds. This is not going to cut it. You won't punch through that armor right there. Those side plates are each 76mm thick, so they can be a weak spot when you are coming from the left hand side towards this tank. And this place up here is 50.8mm thick, meaning everything below 152mm of caliber or 152.4mm of caliber will have auto bounce on this position. Everything above has overmatch and should be able to penetrate it quite easily. And we have one more spot right here, which is 25.4mm thick, and well, that is pretty darn weak. So maybe even shooting at GE at this tank will lead to a good amount of damage when you shoot right here. You can also see there are some weird looking spots of armor right there, but I don't really suggest to look after those, because, well, you're not going to hit them anyway. In my preview video, I was concerned about how strong is the turret ring going to be, because, well, this is part of the turret ring and most likely some shells are even stored here. So this could be a huge weak spot, as is with the Panzerkampfwagen 7 or the VK7201K Tier 10 reward Clan Wars tank. But it looks like it's more or less the same thing you would see on a Super Conqueror. It's very strong, it's still very good angled, and shouldn't be a weak spot whatsoever, except if you're shooting from it from the flat side. But then I suggest to you to go for the flat side armor, which is just 88.9mm thick. There is only one small spot here, which is 50.8mm thick, but again, I'm not going to suggest to you to aim there and use it as a weak spot. Let's be honest, it's just, yeah, ridiculous to hit there. The gun mantlet looks pretty darn good. Nothing else to say. It's around 300mm of effective armor. And you have to note, however, if you manage to punch through the gun mantlet, you will be greeted by either a 38mm plate, by a 292mm plate, or no armor at all. But I don't suggest to go for the gun mantlet. What I suggest to go for is obviously the lower plate if you have the ability, or if this tank is angling, maybe go for those side plates depending how the angle is, as they are tending to be the most weakest. Maybe even try to go for the furthest out corner of this turret ring, because you can see it goes sometimes even down, well, up here it goes down to around 230 millimeters of armor when we have like 210 here. The lower plate is still at 300 millimeters of armor. Please note, we are looking at angle of incidence, not the slope, because the slope is just the set angle from the flat surface, how well angled the armor is. My biggest concern about this tank is, however, how strong the cupola is. It's very strong in my opinion. We can have a look right here. You can see parts of it are 127 millimeters thick, and other parts of it are 203 to 215 millimeters thick. And I highly dislike this. Wargaming. We don't need a tank with, well, basically stupid bonkers frontal armor. This tank right here looks like a, well, Super Conqueror 2.0. Or rather a Chieftain, which is slightly slower, 2.0, but with a better cupola. To just put this quickly into perspective so you know what I'm talking about. The Chieftain, as tough as the god-darn turret is, it has its weak spot, and that's the cupola. And the cupola is rather weak. It's even weaker than the one on the, well, T279. You can see this is the T95, excuse me, I think I took the wrong Chieftain. I made here a mistake. Obviously I need the FV Chieftain, excuse me, this one I need. Obviously I don't want to, I was just like, no, this cupola is too big. Again, the T95 FV4201 Chieftain has a pretty small cupola, but it is not as thickly armored. It's just 140 millimeters at an angle, giving it around 202 millimeters of effective armor. So this cupola is a weak spot. This, however, here gets around 255 millimeters of effective armor, 280, 240. Wargaming, please, 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 do not do this. Because not only is this a reward vehicle and you will most likely not going to nerf this, but it is already incredibly strong, I think. You buffed it already, the armor looks great, and it says, hey, you have to use your brain against your 9 and tier 10 vehicles. But other than that, your armor is great. We don't need such a good cupola. Seriously. Put it down to around, I don't know, 140 millimeters. Take some liberties from the actual Liberté tanks. The AMX M451 and 54. They have, in my opinion, very good cupola weak spots. Maybe a little bit too weak, but still, do not forget, this tank faces tier 7 vehicles. And if you can't penetrate the cupola frontally, you will feel like cheated. So please, Wargaming, give this tank a worse cupola. Again, please note, this is 1.6 test server. Those are still in the testing phase, those tanks, or the super test. I want to say turbo test. So there can be changes. I just want to put out the awareness that this should be changed in my personal view. E75 ST, this bad boy over here. So, it looks definitely stronger in my opinion than the Tiger II, because right now we have around, the slope is 62 degrees at 140 millimeters, giving it usually an effective armor of 298 millimeters, and that is great. To just make a comparison, I'm going to quickly get the Tiger II, which is the current, well, tank in the tech tree. And again, this is pure assumption, but I think that they're probably going to redo the tech tree. And you can see it is 150 millimeter plate at a 51 millimeter angle, 51 degrees angle, giving it 238 millimeters of effective armor upper front plate. And this one has 300 millimeters of effective armor at its slope. So the E75 TS definitely got a good bump up there, and I really do enjoy this. The lower plate is also still decently angled. Right now you can see it is 200, almost 300 millimeters of thick. But again, as soon as you're driving like this, you're exposing your belly, which is 20 millimeters thick. You're exposing this part, which is 40 millimeters thick, and this part, which is 40 millimeters thick, as well as the lower plate. So the E75 TS, if it drives, for example, up the hill on on Himmelsdorf, it has to watch out for tanks with 122mm of caliber. Not only can they punch through right here, they can also punch through right here, detract this behemoth, and do a lot of damage because they penetrate via our match. Nevertheless, the armor, frontally at least, looks very, very strong, and it looks like a lot better than what you have on the Tiger II at the moment. Again, the Tiger II, this is how it looks at the moment. You have 220mm. Wait a second, look, let's do it like this. He's looking directly at us. 202 to 220mm of upper front plate armor, and a lower plate, which is also around 220 to 206mm thick. When you now take the E75 TS and make him look straight at us, we have around 233mm of effective armor to up to 264 on the upper front plate. So that's a great update, and well, this makes this tank a heavy tank. The lower plate goes from 282 up to 322mm of armor. That is ridiculously good. So you have to watch out to not shoot at the lower plate depending on the angle. However, the side armor is 80mm thick. You can see it has those side skirts, which are each 5mm thick, and they are placed quite far away, meaning they will actually be useful against heat shells like on this angle. But as soon as it hits like this, well, the heat screens are not going to be useful anyway. The gun mantlet, it looks pretty fine. Like, I have nothing to complain about. It looks more or less decently thick. There might be a little bit of a weak spot with 230mm, but again, you can see also the gun mantlet behind it is free. You can see it slightly here in the grayish area. It has a big hole. That is okay. I understand that. It's totally fine. You might have to watch out for depending where you're shooting at, but it looks like the good gun mantlet is definitely something like you would see on the Lowe, and the Lowe's gun mantlet is, in my opinion, pretty darn okay. The cupola on this tank is around 200 to 166mm thick, depending where you can hit it, and I think that is more or less okay. I accept that, because the E75 TS has another weak spot, and you might have already seen it. It's little goggly eyes, or the rangefinders, because those rangefinders are 60mm thick each, and behind them is 0 armor. So it's the same as with the E75, it's the same as with the Type 4 and 5 heavy. You shoot through them, you have easy pens, and get straight into the turret. So I think the E75, looking at the damage model right now, looks fairly decently balanced. If you don't know that those are weak spots, then you have troubles against this tank. But I think I look forward to play this heavy tank. One last thing, 40mm of armor, ouch. HE will do damage, and Russian heavy guns with 122mm of caliber will have fun. Lastly, I don't know what about is with this back exhaust. It's very big. Like, I'm just going to quickly get the 3D model, which is a laggy, so keep that in mind. But there we go, quite big. And it looks like at the moment it's part of the damage model. I hope Wargaming is going to change that, because, well, let's be honest, this tank doesn't really need a 40mm weak spot at the butt, so that EBRs have no troubles penetrating it. That would be a little bit mean, in my opinion. Anyway, one more tank, and that's the M48 Raumpanzer, or I don't know what Raumpanzer English. I just have to I have to see if I can find a translation for it. It's a special tank for with demolition gear. I guess that's the best the best explanation for that. If you have a good name for that, please let me know in the comment section below. But yes, I do think this tank looks like a German Super Pershing. Might be even a little bit better. First things first, yes, the shield is part of the damage model. It's 30mm thick, and it makes it, in my opinion, a lot harder to hit the weak spots of the lower plates, which are just like 136mm thick, depending where you hit, like here and here. Still, they are starting, depending where you're hitting, they're getting thicker and stronger. So going straight through the middle might be not the best idea, because suddenly you have around 160mm of armor plus added 30mm, giving you around 200mm of armor. That's pretty strong. So, gotta watch out for that. For example, when we look around here, we have 140mm of armor, plus the 30mm of the gun shield gives it 170mm of armor. So definitely this tank will be quite bouncy, especially if you know what you're doing and standing hull down, because then it will be even harder to penetrate this lower plate. The upper plate also looks decently strong, but then again, I'd suggest to you just drive your M48 pattern or try to find a friend and shoot at it and see if you pen it. It's decently armored. Don't forget, as far as I know, the M48 A2 or the M46 at least was classified as a heavy tank. This one I'm not entirely sure, so the armor holds decently up for a medium tank, let's be honest. 57mm of armor over here will be a little bit weak against artillery, but that's about it. The turret, I think the turret is fantastic. It has this big cupola, yes, you gotta learn to play with it. It's double the strength, however, of the 59 Patton's cupola. The 59 Patton has a mere 76mm of armor, meaning that everything will punch through the cupola. For the M48A2, it won't be everything. You can see that Wargaming specifically went to just buff the frontal armor plate to 152mm of armor. 139, excuse me, of armor. But when the 59 Patton has nothing over there, you can see it's just uniform 76 versus here, just the sides are 76. I like this because if you know what you're doing and, for example, get, I don't know, let's take this as a wall. Oops, not like this. Like this. You can still shoot at the enemy and you have covered your biggest weak spot. When this is a wall, obviously. I like that. That's great. That is, in my opinion, good balancing, and it really puts out you as a good player. You have to play smart to get done with this tank or do good with this tank. So that's a thumbs up to me. And the good thing is, in contrast to the 59 Patton, which has just 177mm of armor and a pretty big open space around the gun mantlet, this tank has also pretty big space around the gun mantlet, but the gun mantlet is 250mm thick, as is the cheeks and the front of the turret, which is around 154mm thick. So, in contrast to the Mauerbrecher, your average tier 8 heavy tank shouldn't be able to penetrate through the turret frontally with AP rounds. So lastly, the side armor, 76mm is a little bit on the low side, but again, don't forget this should be a heavy medium and it could do both subjects. The rear arm is only 50.8mm thick, so you have to look out for 155 and plus guns. But then again, you just see them on tier 9 and tier 10, so yeah, if you are in the front of a T30, you should be scared anyway. Or in front of an E4, or in front of a Foch 155 or a Jack Beaster, you know, you should be scared. I shouldn't tell you that. And lastly, the rear of the tank as well as the roof is pretty darn weak with 25mm thickness, meaning artillery will love to snack on this tank, as will the wheeled wheelie boys, because the rear is 25mm thick. Anyway, I think that's it for this video. We got 3 tanks through. It took me a little bit longer than my German video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comment section below if you want to see more like this, because again, tanks.gg is slightly on the slower side, and I think like this I showed you some more new tanks. If you liked this video, let me know again in the comment section below, because we still got some more tanks to look at, which got introduced in the tests 1.6. I'm not going to look at the light tanks because they don't have armor, but the A43 Black Prince prototype as the T54E2 are still up for the grabs for you to have a look at with me. Anyway, again guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If so, leave a like, leave a comment. If you didn't, dislike, let me know what I can do better. Feel free to subscribe for your dose of World of Tanks in different categories, if it's gameplay, if it's guides, and if it is damage models. Thank you so much for your attention. I'll see you in another video.